All right, so let's get into that conversation now. Are Christians responsible for the corruption in the system, or by extension, those of us who adhere to different religious faiths, are we responsible? Is it the politicians that are responsible? Where do we go from here? Joining us for the conversation, Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante. He is a political scientist, director of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. Doc, good morning to you. Thank you for your company.
Good morning, sir.
So let's start from the standpoint that Christians especially are to blame. That's according to Simon Osei, Ashanti Regional Minister. Do you concur? Do you agree with him?
Partly so, but I also disagree. Why am I saying that? The issue we are looking at has a number of perspectives, and that we can apportion all to Christians. No. It's a societal problem that we have lived with over the years without doing something meaningful to address it. So we have arrived at where we are now based on a number of factors that have really contributed to what we have now.
What are some of those factors you see?
Right. If you look at the volatile nature of politics, I have no doubts in my mind that is also an important factor. Politics, as we have learned from scholars such as J.B. Miller, such as Alan Bohr and all that, politics is conflictual. So anything that has conflict underpinning it, obviously, is volatile. So if you talk about issue of corruption and the nature of it, obviously you are going to incur the wrath of people, those who are neck deep in corruption, those who are beneficiaries of corruption. We are not going to spare you. Even though they are wrong, they are going to take you on. And I'm sure some of these things have eluded the attention of Christians, for that matter, religious leaders, that they don't take into consideration that, hey, this is a volatile subject, and that I need the courage, I need the tenacity, I need the knowledge, the information adequate enough to be able to address it. Once you ignore this, you are going to be attacked. Two is the issue of the politics seen as a public affair. All right. If you look at politics as a public affair, anything within the sphere of politics, for that matter, corruption, all right, strictly speaking, people are interested in. And what is more is that if you look at the effect of corruption on governance or on politics, everybody wants to understand what is happening. Let us look at even figures on corruption. There was a time that we had African leaders, some of whom were very rich than their country. Mobutu Sese Seko was a typical example. We have learned recently that about 3 million of Ghana cedis slipped through our fingers through corruption. That is from GII, Ghana Integrity Initiative report.
I think you mean 3 billion. I don't know, because annually we are losing anything between 2 to about 5 billion when it comes to corruption. So I think you meant billion, right?
Yes. If you look at this quantum of money and what it would do for this country and the people of this country, I'm afraid if you want to touch on that subject, everybody is alert and want to know whether you'll be able to deal with the subject head on. If you look at, beside this, you look at the way Christians or Christian leaders have been handling this subject. Some of them have been fair with the issues, and some of them have been very hypocritical about the subject. We have to put it bluntly. All right. Some have looked at the facts on the ground and have discussed them according to the facts on the ground. But some of them, hey, I don't know where they get their information. They speak anyhow, and then they let you know that, yes, one regime is more corrupt than the other. There's nothing wrong saying it if it is the case. But sometimes what they say do not, support the facts on the ground. More often than not, you realize that they have no idea about Transparency International and the figures that they have, and then the explanatory notes regarding corruption and all that. They just say it, and I don't know where they get information. If you go on that tangent, obviously you are going to incur the wrath of those who have the information, those who have knowledge about the subject, and they will attack you. I'm not saying that attacking people in politics is the way to go. No, I believe in a civil politics where we discuss issues, we agree and disagree, and we come to a consensus. But people will take you on. And then sometimes to, some of our religious leaders, the Christians, for that matter, they want to assume certain position that, look, when they say it, nobody can challenge them. They are not above reproach. When you say something and you are wrong, we will take you on. I want this notice to be served to them that on issue of anything regarding politics, since it concerns all of us, nobody will sit down for some of them who want to, churn out things that are not, accurate. People will take them on. Once they get this tutorial well, coming to speak about subject politics, they'll be so careful. All right, because Pericles has told us that anybody who is not interested in politics, you are not only a useless human being, but what? You are a dangerous person to society. Nobody wants to be defined along these lines. So for that matter, when you speak about corruption and people see that, look, what you are saying do not reflect the situation on the ground, people will take you on. And I'm surprised that they don't have the political wherewithal to withstand all these things, and sometimes they want to what? Back off. No.
Right. So
they need to be bold and move on. And let me also touch on the issue of what? Politicization of the subject matter. If you look at corruption, it is one of the thorny issues in our body politic that political parties, governments have taken entrenched positions on that. And if you are a governance scholar, you will understand this position because take it or leave it, one of the variables that influence voter choices is the issue of what? Corruption. Research has shown that it is about the third most important variable voters consider in what? Making their electoral choices. So when a government falters on that, obviously they are going to pay a high price for that. So when you want to touch on corruption and you are not careful, government, if it is against government will come at you. If it's against political parties will come at you. But in all this, in politics, you need to be bold and what? Maintain your position. Forget about what people say or what people would do. If you think what you are saying is the right thing, move on. And above all, sometimes the way they communicate their messages, that is the leaders of what the churches and all that, it's sometimes very unfair. You realize that they are not on top of the issues and that they don't even want people to comment on it. The recent moderator, you recall, right, when people were, criticizing government describe them as what? Put it mildly, evil men who are criticizing government and on. Let us remember that criticisms are nothing but the oils that grease the wheels of governance, without which every government will grind to a halt.
Okay, so
the way they communicate some of these things will attract what? A backlash.
And we'll get to
now they are shying away.
We'll get to some of the religious leaders and what they have to say. But it's interesting you talk about leadership and their unwillingness, so to speak, to deal with the hydra-headed problem of bribery, corruption, and all of that. Because it just got me reflecting. I cast my mind back to 1999, 2000, and former President Kufuor, his rhetoric, zero tolerance for corruption. And then when he came, at a point, he had to come to us as Ghanaians and say, well, in fact, corruption has been with us since the days of Adam. Then we had former President Mahama, who had also, spoken about tackling corruption. When he was asked about whether he himself was corrupt, he was now asking whether it was about him as an individual or as a public servant and all of that. We've had President Akufo-Addo tout his credentials when it comes to fighting corruption. Yet we see him in office, and there's a lot that we see from civil society to media people that ought to be looked at, and yet it appears it's not exactly the picture we see. So when you look at that, and especially considering that all of these are Christian leaders, and if you look at the scope of our leadership, all our presidents have been questioned. So is that not truth to what the Ashanti Regional Minister is saying? Very, very briefly on that part.
Yes, as I alluded to earlier on, that part of the blame must be placed at the doorstep of you and I, and not only Christians. All right. Yes, Christians also have a role to play in here, because look, sometimes they are so hypocritical about the subject matter. When there is corruption in a government, the way sometimes they handle it, you realize that, look, what they are saying is not true, or it doesn't give us the entire picture about what is happening. And that gives cause for people to say that, look, you are encouraging corruption. Let us remember that corruption has a lot of facets: bribery, nepotism, cronyism, and all that. And that if you want to deal with this subject, you need to have adequate knowledge on the subject matter. Once you fall short of that, people will come at you. So sometimes by either tacit means or any other means, they are able to strengthen the hands of those who engage in corruption. Sometimes too, they just turn a blind eye on this. The issues that sometimes they talk about with regard to corruption, sometimes they are so, minute, but the real, issues of corruption, such as if you look at kickbacks and all that, look at the way they award contracts, politicians, and then kickbacks that come out of these things. Political party financing. Have we gotten the leaders speaking about these things? No, they shy away from this. So you want to believe that hypocritical nature of some of them has given rise to the situation that we find ourselves. In other words, they pay lip service to the issue of corruption. So you embolden people who are in it. You tell them that yes, all is right. After all, the leaders are not talking about it and all that. We expect them as leaders of our society. Let us remember that the church is a place that a lot of people go to and then have fellowship with God and all that. So you have a whole number of people that when you send the right message, it will resonate with the things that are required of us as citizens to do when we want to fight these things. If we're able to do it well, we will be able to deal with corruption. But here you are. Sometimes you see them, they glorify governments, they glorify political parties, and they shy away from the truth. All right. And that is what has brought us thus far.
Let's focus a bit on the religious institutions themselves and the religious bodies. In recent times, like you referenced, we had a Presbyterian, bishop, a Methodist bishop, I beg your pardon, saying certain things that were not exactly politically correct, and his own outfit took him on and said that they did not subscribe to his comments. But we've heard again from a former Presbyterian moderator in the person of Reverend Professor Emmanuel Mati, who was vociferous on the matter of corruption some years back. Now, he's been speaking just yesterday, and he points to the fact that, look, some of us can no longer speak on these matters, or some pastors are no longer speaking on these matters. One, because they are likely to get insulted, or they do get insulted. And two, because some of them have been bribed, sometimes secretly recorded and all of that. And so they cannot open their mouths again. He himself has been accused of being very silent, very loudly silent on matters of corruption, especially in this administration. How do you react to that?
Yes. Some of us are surprised that we have not heard him for a very long time. We recall the statement he made when NDC was in office, attacking the government on issue of corruption. We have heard nothing from him, all right, in that regard. Yesterday, I listened to him, and he was saying that in the Presbyterian Church of Ghana, it is only the moderator who speaks on this matter, and it's not the former moderator. Yes, we want to accept that yes, now that you are out, you can speak the way you want to because there's somebody in office. But he contradicted himself by saying that he sometimes also sends text messages. Then I asked myself, is it also part of the communication? It is. So if you send messages, then I want to know the type of messages you send. Does it relate to corruption? Are you addressing issues of corruption? And who are those you send the messages to? Is it the media or what? Then I want to believe that he's still communicating. So now that he is conspicuously missing in the conversation of what? Corruption, then he opened himself up for attack. Because the people will ask you that, what you did in the previous administration, are you saying that in this government there is no corruption and that you have turned a blind eye to that? And that is where I differ with the professor and the moderator, that look, once you are talking about governance, it's a daily affair, and that what you need to say at each material point in time, you don't hesitate at all, and you say it. Once you drag your feet, once you bring out a certain posture, then people will define one another way, and then they will attack you. That is it. I don't support verbal attacks on people. Let us discuss the issue. But look, people must be prepared for criticisms. And I've seen that with the Christendom, some of them, not all of them, are not ready for criticisms. And I'm surprised that you want to take a swipe at government or a political party, but you yourself don't want to receive you don't want to accept criticism. That, for me, is strange.
I have seen, rhetoric, documents, and all of that from the Ghana Catholic Bishops' Conference in recent times. I think I've heard the Most Reverend Philip Name, for example, speaking and talking about the fact that, look, Christians, Catholics especially, if you feel you're good, don't shy away from politics. Get into it, because that is how we can change the script. That is how we can remedy the situation. If you feel it is bad nuts who are ending up there and enriching themselves, self-aggrandizement, how about you go in there and set an example? That's another side of the coin. What do you say to that?
I don't know whether the person advocating for direct political practice, or he wants just the advocacy of it. If it is about advocacy, I agree. But for proposing that we should have religious leaders engage in practical politics, I'm afraid.
Well, not religious leaders, members of that religious grouping. So Catholics, for example, you feel you're good, you feel you have the quality, get into politics and change the script of maybe some riffraffs, so to speak, who end up there and then do all kinds of things, depleting our state resources.
Yes, I still maintain that position that if you're a leader within the Catholic domain and you want to engage in practical politics, I believe that you must resign, because you get people angry, those who do not share your political ideals and all that, all right? But an ordinary person who is a member of the church can decide to take that position. That I agree. But for the leaders, I'm afraid we can't support that, because then you are going to create chaos within the church. But that is not to say that, look, if you are a leader within the church, you can speak about the ills of our society. Let us remember that whether we like it or not, we are all part of politics from birth to death. So decisions, actions that political leaders affect us. So you cannot sit down and gloss over them and think that all will be right. If you have the microphone, you have the public platform, speak about this and let's see how things will change. But suggesting that we should allow them to be very practical in politics, that is a different conversation, which I don't think I share my views on.
When it comes to the other bit of what Reverend Professor Mate says, he also says that sometimes corruption also has a field day, because guess what? Ethnicity comes in. So you see that Asah-Asante is not doing the right thing, this person or that person, but that person is from your ethnic grouping. And so ethnocentrism comes in a way. How do we deal with it from that angle?
You see, we can borrow a phrase from public administration, which says that sine ira est Dieu, without passion, without hatred, all right? You speak about the issue that concerns public, irrespective of your political interests, irrespective of ethnicity and whatnot. It's about what? How we govern society. Ethnicity, religious connections and all that do not come in if you are serious about politics. Once you tie your apron string to any of this, I'm afraid you are not in politics. You are in something else. Either you are in a mobocracy, or something which is not democratic at all. If you really want to correct a system, you don't look at whoever is in play. And that is why institutions comes in. If you have very strong institutions, the institution must be able to work. And here, when I'm talking about institution, I'm not talking about the buildings that you see with regard to parliament and then office of the president and whatnot. But we are talking about rules and regulations, procedures, norms, and all that. These are things that we must hold dear to our heart and use it as a guide to measure the conduct of public officers, so that when they go wrong, we use the same thing to address the issues or take them on. That is it.
Now we know, Doc, I mean, even an infant in this country knows that some politicians are corrupt. Some. Who and who, we do not have a full list. Only God knows. But we know that some of them definitely are corrupt. And this is where it becomes a bit murky because, for example, we've had the situation where the Office of the Special Prosecutor, in fact, the Special Prosecutor has had to push forward what has to do with the Dwabeng MCE contender, who last year was caught on video talking about the fact that he had distributed 1,000 CDs each to assemblymen, and they hadn't voted for him, about 26 of them. We also have the current issue of, a very unfortunate issue, of Sir John and his bequeathing even portions of the Achimota forest and so much property when you look at the timelines, and people asking, wow, so if you can acquire such, property within such a short span, then what does that point to? I pose these questions in terms of asset declaration, an area where we're still bleeding as a country. How can that feed into resolving the bribery and corruption conundrum?
You see, over the years, we have said that we are ready to fight corruption, but I don't think this country we are ready. Both the political elites, ordinary people, we are not. Let me use the political elites. Look at their campaign, messages. Look at their manifestos. You realize that corruption is in there. That we will do ABC to fight corruption. When they come, they just shy away from their own promise. But what is worrying is that we as citizens have not been angry enough to throw them out. That, look, you promised us that you do ABC on the basis of corruption, and that you have shied away from this. So on that basis, we are throwing you out. We glorify them, we accept them, and sometimes even turn a blind eye on some of these things. And that is what emboldened them to misbehave this way. All right. Look at even our posture towards wealthy people in this country. You ask yourself, where did they get resources? You are in this country and people go to political offices, leave office, and in no time, you see them fleet of houses. You see them a lot of properties that they have acquired. Where did they get them? And nobody's bothered about it. And only turn around during election time and promise that, look, we'll make corruption, a very expensive business. We'll do this. For me, these are all rhetorics. Our leaders and ourselves are not ready to fight corruption. That is the matter that is there for all of us to see. But look, if we continue on this tangent, a time will come that all of us will be engulfed with corruption. And that is where we don't want to get to that end. Once you get there, you are getting closer to what? Failed state. And for me, that's my prayer, that we don't get there. We need a political John the Baptist who, come from each of the political parties and say, look, enough of this, excuse my word, nonsense. Let's stop it. And let us deal with this canker once and for all. If we are not ready to have such a political leader leading us, I'm afraid we'll all go circles, and at the end of the day, corruption will engulf all of us. I am worried because the effect of corruption is so huge on ourselves. We need to sit up as a people and make sure that we make corruption a very expensive business for political elites, for ordinary people, and all that. There are certain institutions in this country that if you look at the salaries that they take, something meager, and look at the personnel who work there, affluent lifestyle and all that, and nobody questions them. People drive a lot of expensive cars in this country, and nobody questions them. How do they account for the wealth that they have? Look at the issue of what, as you said, the declaration of asset. The law that we have is a joke. It's a mere joke that we are not ready. It tells you that this country, we are not ready to fight corruption. Because if we are ready to fight corruption, there are a lot of examples that we can borrow and make amends with the law that exists. We have closed our eyes to that, and we have something representing asset declaration in terms of law. It's nothing but a waste of everybody's time.
Maybe your concluding thoughts on this. The special prosecutor, Kisia Jabeng, has been saying that his outfit has enough evidence to proceed with the prosecution case against former CEO of the Public Procurement Authority, Ejenim Boateng Ajay, and his brother-in-law, Francis Kweku Ahen. What would you like to see in this respect? That'll be my final question.
All that I want to see is that anybody who crosses the line without fear or favor, sine era is to do principle, must be applied. Take the person to the appropriate forum, that's the law court, let him defend himself, and that's it. You know, democracy is anchored on rule of law. I don't want any arbitrary decision taking on people who have been accused. Just put them before the right forum, and then they will have opportunity to defend themselves. That's it.
Okie doke. And that's how we wrap this conversation. But we're very grateful, as always, for your time, Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, for sharing your thoughts with us.
I am also grateful.
So moving on from there, when we return after this break, it's a conversation on Ghana's dams. Now, research actually tells us that some 54% of our dams are flood prone. Can you even imagine what that means? Now, Ghana is expected to experience more acute climate hazards such as flooding, which we are seeing now, but to a greater extent, as well as more frequent and intense drought. Climate-related extreme events have that potential to put the years of progress towards growth and development at risk. So, how can Ghana build a more sustainable and resilient society through climate change adaptation? Well, we have that discussion up next on the AM show. Don't miss it.